Elias Merrow was 41 years old, the kind of man who had spent 11 years letting his wife believe she had married down. He drove a 2011 Honda Civic with a hairline crack in the windshield he had never bothered to replace. He wore the same dark green field jacket he had bought at an Army surplus store in his 20s. On a Wednesday night in October, his wife, Delaney, set a packed duffel bag on the kitchen floor between them and told him she was done carrying him, done apologizing for him, done pretending she had not made the worst financial decision of her life when she married a man who would never be more than what he already was. She told him to be out by morning. She told him she had already changed the locks. He did not raise his voice. He did not argue. He picked up the duffel bag, walked out the front door of the house she believed she owned, and slept in the back of the Civic in a Walmart parking lot in the rain. At 7:14 the next morning, while she was standing at the kitchen window with her coffee, a Gulfstream G700 began its descent over the field behind their property, and Delaney Merrow watched. Frozen, as the private jet she did not know was coming touchdown on a private strip she did not know existed on land she did not know her husband had owned for 9 years. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from, and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The rain on the roof of the Civic was steady, not hard. Elias lay across the folded-down back seat with his green field jacket pulled over him and the duffel bag wedged under his head as a pillow. He was not asleep. He had not really expected to sleep. He looked at the ceiling of the car. He listened to the rain. He thought about the way Delaney had set the duffel bag down on the kitchen tile, the way she had taken a small step back from it as if it had been contagious. He filed it away the way he filed away small things. Quietly, without deciding yet what it meant. He had been Elias Merrow for 41 years, and the founder of Merrow Aerospace Components for 15 of them. The company had begun in a leased machine shop outside Akron, with 2 partners, 3 employees, and an unsecured personal line of credit Elias had taken against the small parcel of land his grandfather had left him. The land had been farmland once. 68 acres of soybean and corn that the family had stopped working in the 1980s. He had borrowed against it because it had been the only collateral he had owned. He had paid the loan back in 14 months. He had not sold the land. He had kept it. And over the years, as the company had grown from a 4-person shop into a privately held supplier of precision components to 3 of the largest defense and aerospace contractors in the country, he had quietly built a 3,400-foot private airstrip on the back 40 for the executives and engineering teams who flew in for quarterly reviews from Texas, California, and Connecticut. The strip had been operational for 9 years. Delaney had never asked what was back there. He had told her once that it was leased to an agricultural cooperative. She had not pressed. She had not been curious about anything that did not directly increase the size of the life she wanted. In the 11 years of their marriage, Elias had paid for everything. He had paid for it in a particular way. He had paid the mortgage on the house out of an account labeled Merrow Personal Checking that had a balance she could see. A balance he kept deliberately low. He had paid for her car, for her clothes, for the renovations on the kitchen out of that same account. He had let her believe that money was hard, because he had wanted to know whether she would love a man for whom money was hard. He had wanted to know that before he had let her see the rest of him. He had his answer now. He had not gotten the answer all at once. He had gotten it the way a person gets to the bottom of a slow leak. The first sign had been 6 years ago, when his mother had been admitted to a hospital in Cleveland with a stroke, and Delaney had told him on the phone that she could not come because she had a hair appointment she had waited 3 weeks for. The second sign had been 4 years ago, at a Christmas party hosted by one of his suppliers, when Delaney had introduced him to a man at the bar as my husband, who works in manufacturing, and had laughed in a particular way when the man had asked which company. The third sign had been steady, undated, accumulated. The way she stopped asking about his day, the way her phone moved to face away from him at dinner, the way she had begun, in the last 14 months, to refer to herself in conversation as the breadwinner. Even though she made $41,000 a year at a real estate office where her main contribution was her last name. He had not corrected her. He had wanted to see how far she would go. She had gone all the way. The Wednesday before, Elias had taken a call from his chief financial officer at 6:40 in the morning. The board had approved the pricing. The IPO would be filed within 10 weeks. The roadshow would begin in March. Mero Aerospace was about to become a publicly traded company at a valuation that 2 outside firms had independently estimated at $1.8 billion. Elias was the majority shareholder. After the IPO, his personal stake would be worth, on paper, somewhere between $600 and $700 million. He had thanked his CFO. He had hung up. He had stood in his small home office for several minutes in the brown morning light, and he had thought, with a clarity that surprised him, that this was the moment he had been waiting for, not because of the money, because of what the money was going to do to his wife. He had spent that week deciding how to tell her. He had not gotten the chance. That was what she hadn't understood. Until now. The rain stopped sometime around 4 in the morning. Elias slept in fragments after that, the way he had taught himself to sleep on overnight inspection trips when he was younger, in motel parking lots and rented bunks. At 6:50 he sat up. He drank water from a bottle in the door pocket. He brushed his teeth at the gas station bathroom across the lot. He drove the Civic, not back to the house, but to a small county road he knew. A road that ran along the western edge of the 68 acres his grandfather had left him. He parked on the shoulder. He got out of the car. He stood at the fence line in his Greenfield jacket and watched the sky. He had called Walter Pace at 5:45 that morning. Walter had been the chief pilot for Mero Aerospace for 11 years. Walter had asked no questions. Elias had told him to bring the company aircraft from Cleveland Hopkins to the home field at 7:15 for an unscheduled executive transport. Walter had said yes, sir, and had hung up. He had not asked who the executive was. He had known. At 7:12, Elias saw the Gulf Stream coming in from the northeast, low and steady, gear already down. He watched it pass over the tree line at the back of the property. He watched it touch down on the strip he had built 9 years ago, the strip his wife had spent 11 years not looking at. The engines reversed. The aircraft rolled to the small steel hangar at the south end of the property. Walter Pace, 63 years old, in a Navy uniform and a cap, walked down the air stair and stood beside the wing with his hands behind his back, waiting. Elias did not look at the house. He had not come to look at the house. But the house was directly across the property from where he stood, and through the bare lower branches of the maple line, he could see the kitchen window. And he could see, even from that distance, the figure of a woman standing at the window in a white robe, holding a coffee cup, motionless. He knew, without having to see her face, exactly what her face was doing. He turned away from the house. He walked across the field toward the hangar. The grass was wet against his boots. He shook Walter's hand at the foot of the air stair. He climbed into the cabin. He did not look back. She thought this was already over. Delaney Mero had spent the previous afternoon at a salon downtown, and the morning before that with her sister Renata and an attorney named Bradford Whitehorn, whom Renata had insisted on. Bradford had explained to Delaney that under the state's equitable distribution statute, she would likely receive the marital home, half of the value of any assets accumulated during the marriage, and a manageable amount of spousal maintenance for a defined term. Delaney had nodded a lot. She had not corrected Bradford on his estimate of the marital assets, which she had given him as the house, the 2 cars, and approximately $14,000 in a joint checking account. Bradford had told her, gently, that even with a clean, equitable split, she should be prepared for the reality that there was not very much to split. Delaney had told him she understood. She had told him, with a smile that Bradford had found memorable enough to mention to his paralegal later, that she had already factored that in, and that what she was buying was her freedom from a man who had wasted the best decade of her life by failing to become anything. She had gone home that afternoon and packed Elias's duffel bag herself. She had put in 3 shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, his shaving kit, and the green field jacket she had always hated. She had set the bag on the kitchen tile. She had waited for him to come home. She had said her piece. She had been very clear. She had told him she was done. And then, on a Thursday morning at 7:14, while she was drinking the first coffee of her newly single life, a private jet had landed in the field behind her house, and the man she had thrown out the night before had walked across the grass and stepped into the cabin of an aircraft she had not known existed, and a pilot in a Navy uniform had nodded to him. And the air stair had retracted, and the aircraft had begun to taxi back toward the strip. She stood at the window for a long time. Her coffee went cold. She did not put the cup down. He didn't move fast. That was the part she had never been able to account for. She had spent 11 years deciding exactly what kind of man Elias Merrill was. She had been wrong about the most important thing. She had mistaken his patience for the absence of capability. It wasn't. Patience was his most practiced skill. It was just the one she had never had reason to watch him use. He landed in Cleveland at 7:48. A car was waiting at the FBO. He went directly to the offices of Pace, Linwood, and Terry, where a woman named Imogen Linwood had been his attorney for 9 years. Imogen was 67, small, straight-backed, with reading glasses on a beaded chain. She had been a senior partner at a much larger firm before she had left to start her own practice, and she had told Elias on the day he had hired her that she did not represent any client whose business she did not personally believe in. She kept a leather notebook on her desk next to a small silver dish that held 3 paper clips and a single mercury dime that her father had carried in his pocket every day of his working life. Imogen poured him coffee. She sat down across from him. She opened the leather notebook to a page that had been waiting. "I was hoping you'd come today," she said. "I wasn't going to call. But I was hoping." He looked at the page. It was a chronology, dated entries running back 14 months. Each entry referenced a phone call Delaney had made from a landline at her real estate office to a man named Roderick Hett, a divorce attorney out of Columbus who specialized in high-net-worth dissolution. Hett had been retained on a consultation basis 9 months ago. He had not yet been retained on a representation basis, because Delaney, according to the notes Imogen had pieced together from a contact at Hett's firm, had been waiting to confirm something specific before she committed. "She was waiting to find out what you were worth," Imogen said. She suspected. She did not know. She told Hett's intake paralegal in their first consultation that her husband was probably hiding something and that she wanted to know what before she filed. Hett quoted her a number for a forensic investigation. She balked at the number. She decided, apparently, to push you herself and see what came out. "She pushed me out," Elias said. "She pushed you out," Imogen said. "There's more. Eat first, then listen." She made him a sandwich on white bread, the way his mother had made them. He ate half of it. He drank the coffee. He waited. When she was sure he was ready, Imogen opened a thin manila folder and slid a single document across the desk. It was a copy of a quitclaim deed, prepared but not yet executed, in which Delaney Merrow proposed to transfer her stated interest in the marital residence to a holding entity controlled by her sister Renata. The document was dated 3 weeks earlier. It had not been signed. It had not been recorded. It had been prepared in anticipation of a divorce filing she had not yet made. She was going to file Monday, Imogen said. Het's intake paralegal confirmed it last week. The plan was to move the house out of her name before the filing, so it wouldn't appear as a marital asset she might owe you any portion of. She intended to walk into court owning nothing, and to argue that you had been the primary economic contributor and therefore owed her half of everything she could prove you had earned during the marriage. She did not know what you had earned. She had been hoping to find out during discovery. Elias read the document once, then he folded it in half and in half again and put it in the inside pocket of his Greenfield jacket. "There is one more thing," Imogen said, "and I want you to know I sat with it for 6 days before I decided to include it. 3 months ago, Delaney made an inquiry to a real estate broker in Akron about the assessed value of the 68 acres behind your home. She told the broker she was the owner. The broker, who happens to know me, called me to verify. I told him the land was not for sale. I did not tell him who owned it. He told her the same. She told the broker she was gathering information for estate planning purposes. I am telling you this not to make a decision for you. I am telling you what I saw. And I am going to show you what I kept." She closed the notebook. She did not refill his coffee yet. She was waiting. Elias looked at the documents, the chronology. The unfiled quit-claim deed, the real estate inquiry on land she had not known he owned. He looked at all of it the way he had been taught to look at a tolerance stack on a precision part. Not at any single dimension, but at how the dimensions accumulated. He could see exactly where the lines connected. He could see what she had built. He could see, with the same quiet recognition he had felt in the back of the Civic at 3 a.m, that his wife had been preparing to extract everything she could find from a man she had decided, in advance, did not deserve to keep what he had earned. He could see all of it. Imogen refilled his coffee. He arrived 31 minutes early. He liked it that way. The boardroom of Merrow Aerospace Components was on the 4th floor of a brick building south of the river. Long oak table. 8 chairs. A window that looked out toward the runway of the small executive airfield, where Walter Pace was, at that moment, completing his post-flight checklist on the Gulfstream. The room had no art on the walls. Elias had never seen a reason for art in a room where decisions were made. He sat at the head of the table. Imogen sat to his right. His chief financial officer, a man named Tobias Krall, sat to his left with 2 folders in front of him. The chairman of the board, an Air Force colonel retired named Henry Vance, sat across from Elias. The remaining 4 board members sat in their usual places. At 10 o'clock, the door opened and Delaney Merrow was shown in by Elias's executive assistant, a woman named Rennie Bell, whom Delaney had spoken to perhaps 4 times in 11 years and had never thanked. Delaney had been called that morning by a woman who had identified herself only as the office of her husband's company, and had been told that Mr. Merrow had requested her presence at a meeting at 10 that would clarify several matters before any legal proceedings began. Delaney had assumed it was a settlement meeting. She had worn a black blazer she had bought for the occasion 2 weeks earlier, in anticipation of an event she had imagined would feel very different from this one. She came through the door the way a woman comes through a door when she still believes the room is hers to negotiate. She looked at Elias. She looked at the room. She looked at the 7 people seated at the long oak table. She did not understand yet what she was looking at. Rennie Bell pulled out the single empty chair at the foot of the table. Delaney sat down. Henry Vance opened the meeting. "Mrs. Merrow," he said, "thank you for coming. My name is Henry Vance. I am the chairman of the board of Merrow Aerospace Components. To my left and right are the other members of this board. Mrs. Merrow has asked us to convene this morning to formally update the board on a personal matter that, due to its proximity to our upcoming public offering, has now become a corporate disclosure matter." Delaney's face did not change. She had not yet absorbed the word board. For the record, Henry Vance said, "Merrow Aerospace Components will be filing its S-1 with the Securities and Exchange Commission in approximately 10 weeks. The current pre-IPO valuation, confirmed independently by Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan, is $1.8 billion. Mr. Merrow's personal stake, post-offering, is projected at $647 million. Under SEC regulation, the disposition of a founder's personal estate, including any pending marital dissolution, is a material fact that must be disclosed to potential investors during the roadshow." Henry Vance paused. He let the silence sit. "Miss Linwood will now walk through the material disclosures." Imogen opened the folder. She read out the chronology of Delaney's calls to Roderick Hett. She read out the dates of the consultations. She read out the proposed quit-claim deed to Renata. She read out the unauthorized real estate inquiry into the 68 acres. She did not raise her voice. She did not interpret anything. She read the document trail the way a notary reads a deed at closing. Flat. Factual. Complete. Delaney's expression had not changed. Or rather, she had worked to keep it from changing, and that effort was visible to every person at the table. Elias was watching closely enough. When Imogen finished, Henry Vance spoke again. "Mrs. Merrow, you are not on trial here. This is not a legal proceeding. This is a disclosure meeting. You are welcome to be represented by counsel for any subsequent discussion. What you should understand is that the proposed transfer of the marital residence to your sister's holding entity, prior to the filing of any divorce action, is what is known in this state as a fraudulent transfer in anticipation of dissolution. It is voidable on its face. The inquiry into the value of land you do not own and have no authority over is, separately, actionable as an attempted misrepresentation. Neither matter requires action by Mr. Merrow today. Both matters have been documented." He looked at Elias. Elias looked at Delaney. He spoke for the first time since she had entered the room. He said it quietly, only for her, not as performance, because it was meant for her. "You spent 11 years deciding what I was worth. You decided I was worth less than the life you wanted. I let you decide that. I wanted to see if you would change your mind when the only reason to change it was me. You didn't. The jet wasn't the answer to your question. The jet was just what I look like when I stopped pretending to be small for you." He stood. He buttoned the Greenfield jacket. He nodded to Henry Vance. He nodded to Imogen. He walked toward the door. He stopped once at the doorway. He did not turn around. He spoke to the room without facing it. "Imogen will be in touch. Mrs. Merrow can keep the house. I would prefer she did. I would prefer she sit in it for a long time." He walked out without looking back. It did not happen all at once. The divorce was filed by Elias's attorney within 10 days. The quit-claim deed to Renata was withdrawn before it was ever recorded. Delaney retained Bradford Whitehorn, who informed her, after reviewing the case for 48 hours, that he was no longer in a position to represent her, and recommended she find counsel with experience in pre-IPO marital dissolution. She retained a third attorney. The settlement, when it was reached 6 months later, gave Delaney the marital residence, both vehicles, and a structured maintenance payment that ended after 4 years. She did not receive any portion of the company. She did not receive any portion of the 68 acres. She had, in writing, agreed in their prenuptial that she would not. She had forgotten. She had signed the prenuptial. Elias had not. The IPO went through in March, on schedule. Mero Aerospace Components priced at the high end of its range. The share price closed 23% above the offering price on the first day of trading. Elias did not give an interview. He attended the bell ringing with his mother, who had recovered well enough from her stroke to walk the floor of the exchange with her son in a navy dress that she had bought specifically for the occasion. Delaney moved into the house she had been granted. She lived in it alone. The neighbors, who had known her for 11 years as a woman who introduced her husband apologetically, learned over the following spring what the husband had actually been. Their kindness toward her cooled in the careful, quiet way kindness cools in small towns when people have made up their minds. The invitations stopped arriving. The friends she had cultivated as the wife of a small manufacturer did not particularly want to remain the friends of a divorced woman who had thrown her husband out the night before he became someone they would have wanted to know. She was not destroyed. She was simply reduced to the life she had built when she had thought she was building a different one. Elias did not return to the house. He bought a small property on the western edge of the original 68 acres and built a low cedar house there over the course of 15 months, with a view of the airstrip and the Maple Line, and, in the far distance, the roof of the house where he had spent 11 years pretending to be the man Delaney had decided he was. His mother sent him a small succulent in a clay pot the week he moved in. No card. She set it on the kitchen counter herself. He watered it on Thursdays. On a Saturday morning in late April, 15 months after a Gulfstream had landed at 7:14 on a Thursday in October, Elias sat on the back deck of the cedar house in his green field jacket with a cup of coffee. The Maple Line was just beginning to leave. He could hear, across the field, the engine of a tractor at his neighbor's farm. He could see, in the distance, the small white shape of the house Delaney had been granted. The morning light was flat and bright. He finished the coffee. He set the cup down on the railing. He went inside and turned out the light. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.